What was so special about May 17th? Nothing special. It wasn't my wife's birthday, our anniversary, or even the first day we met. It was an ordinary day, an ordinary Tuesday, and that's why I chose it. My name is Keith, and my marriage to Lisa after 12 years began to become a little outdated. Or better to say, predictable. It's not that I didn't love her. She and the kids were the most important things in my life. However, that little sparkle that usually appeared in her eyes when I mentioned making love seemed to have disappeared lately. Therefore, being a hopeless romantic, I decided to give her an evening that she will never forget. On Monday morning at work, I pulled out the big guns, Katie, Cheryl, and Karen, 3 single women at work. Okay, lady, if you could write a script for the most romantic night of your life, what would it be? I asked them. Around midnight, they all started rattling off to Paris, making love in a gondola in Venice, or watching the sunset from a jacuzzi over the wet Swiss Alps. Take it easy, girls, I told them. I'm thinking more about a romantic night at home or in one of the hotels in the city center. Something that won't break my bank account. By noon, they returned with a list of ideas that were now in my price range. I thanked them, gave them lunch, and started making plans. The first thing I did was take a day off on Wednesday afternoon to get everything done before my wife returned. She usually came home around 6. On Tuesday night, I told Lisa that my parents wanted to invite the kids to dinner and a show on Wednesday, so they probably won't be home until 8 at night. The children were even more delighted when I told them that I had a surprise for their mom and that they would really spend the night with their grandparents. My parents always spoiled them terribly. I left work on Wednesday around 11:30 with my trusty list in hand. This was followed by a trip to the store. The flower girl looked at me strangely when I asked her for 2 pounds of rose petals until I told her what I was going to do with them. You must love your wife very much to go to all this trouble for her, she said when I left the rose petals in my hand. Finally, I booked a table at Lisa's favorite steakhouse. I figured we'd need some food by 8, and if we decide to cancel dinner, I'll make sure we have steaks in the fridge to roast on the patio. Finally, everything began to come together. I returned home, hid the car behind the house, and brought everything to the kitchen. It's 2:30. That gives me an hour to get everything ready. I told myself, over the next hour, I froze the wine in the freezer, made a huge heart on the bed with rose petals, and taking pieces of chocolate, wrote the words, "I love you" in the center. I filled the garden tub with water and sprinkled the remaining rose petals on top with bubbling water. I put the wine in an ice bucket on my side of the bed and put a card on her bedside table next to the reading lamp. I dimmed the overhead light, opened a bottle of wine, and poured 2 glasses. I put our portable CD player on the dresser and decided that I would turn it on after she entered the bedroom. The last thing I did was take a shower and shave. At exactly 3:25 a.m., I heard her car pull up. I was more than ready. I closed the bedroom door, holding 2 glasses of wine in my hands, and waited for her to come. Upstairs, I heard muffled laughter and what sounded like a pack of horses coming up the stairs as they burst through the bedroom door. They were making love. It was Lisa and her son from her first husband, Rick. Do you know how long 4.75 seconds last? It's like one huge sigh when your eyes meet, hers, or 3 strokes of a broken heart. But enough time to destroy the romantic mood and destroy the marriage. It took Lisa's brain 1.5 seconds to determine that something had changed when she ran into our bedroom. Her brain then sent a pulse to her voice box, which took about 2 seconds for her to utter the words, "Oh my God." If it wasn't a world record for the destruction of a marriage, then it should have been at least the second. Rick, seeing what was happening, turned around and ran to the front door. He disappeared in less than 45 seconds. On the contrary, I watched Lisa start crying and fall to her knees. I pour the contents of both glasses onto the bed, go to the closet, and start getting dressed. All the while listening to Lisa tell me how sorry she is and how much she loves me. It took me about 5 minutes to get dressed and tell her that it was in her best interest that she leave before I got back. I went downstairs, got in the car, and drove to the nearest place where I could have a drink. I couldn't believe what she was doing to her own son, and so I'm sitting at Tony's and finishing my 4th beer, wondering what my next step will be. At 6:30, I returned to my now quiet and empty house. The front door was unlocked, and Lisa's car was nowhere to be found. I went to our bedroom. It was almost the same as when I left. The garden tub was working, the wine, the postcard, the chocolate were there, untouched. Lisa's closet was open, as were several drawers. I sat down on the bed and tried to put my thoughts in order when my cell phone rang. I turned it off without answering because I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone right now. I know I have to replace the mattress in the guest room. I said to myself when I woke up the next morning. I showered, shaved, and went to work, but on the way to my office, I looked more like a zombie. Well, how did it go? All three girls shouted as they ran into my office. From the way you look, it must have been a hell of a night. Karen giggled, elbowing the other two. Oh, it was, I replied, telling them a short version of last night. What are you going to do? Cheryl asked. To survive and take care of my children, I muttered. So if you don't mind, please keep quiet about it. I don't want to be the laughingstock of the whole office. I told them. They left telling me how sorry they were and that if I needed to talk to someone, they were always there. I thanked them and closed the office door. Bank accounts, credit cards, life insurance policies, all of them were closed or changed by 9:30 a.m. Then I called my parents and said that Lisa and I were having some problems and asked if they could leave my children until the weekend. They were saddened to hear about it and were more than happy to watch the children. Checking my cell phone, I found 20 messages from Lisa. I threw them all away. The lawyer gave me the name of a good lawyer at a reasonable price, if possible, and I made an appointment for Friday morning. You'll never really know how screwed up you are until you spend 2 hours with a divorce lawyer until he outlines your options or lack thereof. It was your word against hers. Lisa and son Rick hadn't done anything yet when you caught them, and you can't kick her out of the house because it was her house too. You know, what really pissed me off was that she would most likely get custody. He offered marriage counseling, or at least a cooling off period before I did anything. Look, Keith, no matter what you do, you're going to be paying child support for the next 8 years at least, plus the house payments. The only thing you can do is bide your time and try to minimize your losses. Look, if it were me, I'd move into a spare bedroom and make life at home as easy as possible for your kids, he suggested. I left early and moved all my stuff to the spare bedroom. I bought a new mattress and threw the old one on the side of the road. I never answered Lisa's calls, but I knew that sooner or later she would most likely show up at the house. So I tried to be ready for a meeting. I picked up the kids on Friday on my way home from work and took them to the pizzeria. They told me how they had a great time, but were glad to be back. Lisa finally showed up at about 8:30 that evening. The children surrounded her from all sides, but she never took her eyes off me. By 10 o'clock, they went to their rooms, and I went to the guest room. Lisa asked if we could talk later, but I told her I wasn't in the mood. Maybe tomorrow, I said, closing and locking the door. I heard a muffled scream as she was examining what used to be our bedroom. I could hear the sheets being pulled off the bed and other sounds when I imagined her trying to clean up the room. On Saturday morning, I noticed a postcard, rose petals, and chocolate in the trash, along with an empty bottle of wine. The children had breakfast and went about their usual Saturday chores, friends and football. I wasn't really hungry, so I just made coffee. Lisa came down just as I was finishing my first cup. I poured myself another drink, grabbed the newspaper, and went on deck. You know you're going to have to talk to me sooner or later, she said through reddened eyes. But why, Lisa? What can you tell me to explain what I saw on Wednesday? How long have you been cheating on me with your son? It was only the second time. Believe me, dear, Lisa sobbed. Why do I have a hard time believing you? And by the way, you've lost the privilege of calling me cute or something that sounds gentle. I spat out. We're going to exist for the children until I figure out what's best for me and for them. It looks like you've already made your choice. Then Lisa ran into the house, and I finished my coffee and tore up the newspaper in a rage. For the next 2 weeks, work sucked, but at least it wasn't as bad as my home life. Someone had blabbed at work, and now all I got were these pitying looks from all the women in my work office every time I walked past them. My boss wanted to know if I needed personal free time, but I told him that I was coping with it and that I needed a job to stay sane. The children realized from the first day that something had happened and asked if they had done anything wrong. "Children, your mother and I are going through a difficult period, but everything is fine." Believe me, I told them, but it was not so. Lisa tried to get me to talk, but I didn't feel anything for her anymore. "Get your coat, we're leaving," she announced. I looked up to say something, but she stopped me. "Maybe you don't understand. It's not a request. Grab your damn coat. We're getting out of here," she announced. When Cheryl and I arrived at Anthony's, two more of the formidable trio, Katie and Karen, were sitting at a table in the corner. After ordering a drink, Cheryl started on me. "You have to come to your senses, Kit," she began. "You've been pale for the last 2 weeks. I have my reasons, so why don't you just fuck off?" I almost shouted back at her. "Fuck off, you're not talking to Lisa," Karen replied. "Or are you going to wallow in self-pity for the rest of your life?" "I want everything to be the way it was before it happened," I said, looking at my glass. "I thought you said your marriage was outdated and you wanted to revive it." Katie asked, "Do you really want to go back to your boring life? Do you love her? What about her adult son?" "I love and hate her at the same time," I shouted. "I just don't know what to do or even where to start." "Let's eat, and then we'll figure it out," Cheryl said, beckoning the waiter over. "The first thing we need to do is level the playing field. Lisa is still at your house and returns to work every day. Her son, on the other hand, is coming home to her even though he ruined your marriage. Cheryl said, it's time for you to get your life back." By the end of the evening, I felt better, and they were right. I had to do something. I couldn't let it go on. It was tearing me apart. Lisa wanted to know where I was when I got home. "Here, what's it to you?" I shouted as she went crying into her bedroom. The next day, I met with my lawyer, Randy. "I thought you were going to wait for a divorce," he asked. "Yes, I want to sue the company where her son Rick and Lisa work." I told him, "Look, Keith, you don't have hard evidence. I told you so. I know, but they work for a public company. I don't think they want bad press. Besides, even though Lisa wasn't at work, don't most managers work until 5? Isn't there a moral clause in most corporate laws?" Randy said it would take a couple of days for everything to be finalized and the paperwork filed, but he would warn me when the case went down. For the next 3 days, I was the same whale. I joked with people at work, had fun with the kids, and even started talking to Lisa again, which made her life a little easier. Randy called on Thursday and said that their company had been serviced, but I asked him to wait with Rick's papers until we agreed with their company. By the following Tuesday, Randy and I were already sitting in the conference room, opposite the CEO and his manager. "We've reviewed the documents, and it looks like you forgot to include any documents about the alleged incident," the manager began. Then he said something about frivolous lawsuits and was quite surprised when I got up and headed for the exit. "I think I'll see you in court then," I said, getting up from my chair. "You know, we're going to take statements from all the office employees," I said calmly. "How many of them do you think knew what was going on? All I have to do is find 1 or 2. I told them. "And how many managers do you think will protect Rick?" "Good luck, gentlemen," I said, walking out with Randy. On Wednesday, I was sitting at my desk when Randy called. "They want to sort out, or as they put it, what it takes to make this mess go away." He told me, "Well, I asked for $250,000, attorney's fees, and for both of them to be transferred to other state offices." "That should cover everything," I told him. "Tell them the offer is valid until Thursday afternoon, and then we'll move on." Randy called me again this afternoon. "They've agreed to fees and transfers, but they're offering $150,000, he told me. "Randy, stop haggling. Tell them that the price is now $300,000, and if they come back with another counteroffer, the price will rise to $400,000. Maybe that will put an end to everything." Randy called at $330 on Thursday and said that my offer had been accepted and that he would give me the forms to sign by 5 o'clock. True to his word, a package was delivered to my office. At 4:30, this man said he was expected. The secretary informed me. After reviewing the papers and the check attached to them, I signed the papers and handed them over. If someone is looking for me, then I'm gone for the whole day. I told her as I left the office. In the car on the way home, I quickly called Randy. "Serve Rick tonight and do it at his house. I was over the moon with happiness. I will be able to move on. Okay, everyone, grab your coat because we're going to dinner tonight, I said, walking through the door. Lisa looked at me and didn't move when he continued. Come on, Lisa, you too. A wide smile appeared on her face as she ran to get her coat. At dinner, we talked and laughed as we have done for the last 12 years. Life was good again, almost good. When we got home, everyone thanked me for a great evening and went to their rooms. I told her that we were going to have a nice long conversation tomorrow night, so she needed to get some sleep. You knew last night what was going to happen today, didn't you? Not exactly, Lisa, but pretty close, I replied. And where is the job that you were offered? I asked. It looks like my services are no longer needed here, and that it was either New Jersey or I was out of a job, she explained. I told them that they would never transfer me there, and then they handed me a severance package and gave me 20 minutes to clean the table. She sobbed. I gave them 8 years, and 20 minutes later I was out the door, she said, sitting on a kitchen chair and sobbing. Where is your friend Rick being transferred to? I asked. Flint, Michigan, she said, staring at the floor. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, I said, smiling. Well, Lisa, this is how the next phase will go, I said, pulling up my chair. If you want to be a part of this family, here are the conditions. First of all, you need to be examined for diseases and bring me a health certificate. Then you'll take a polygraph test. And to help you, I'll even ask all the questions in advance, I said, handing the paper across the table. As you can see, they start very easily, but they become more difficult down the list. By the time she got to the last group, she started crying. Am I the biological father of my 2 children? Why was she cheating? When we made love in the last couple of months, who were you thinking about, your son or me? How many times have you lied to me in the last couple of months? How many affairs have you had? Do you still love me? You have a meeting tomorrow at 9, I said. And if you get through this without too many surprises, we have an appointment with the marriage counselor for Saturday morning. Lisa just sat and cried, turning over the questions. I can answer them now if you want, she said. I think I'll wait until tomorrow, I told her. It's just that I don't trust you anymore, and I want to start over without any lies, if you don't mind. I didn't like all her answers, but in my mind she passed. Do I trust her? Of course not. Do I plan to stay with her? Well, the jury hasn't reached a final conclusion yet, but we're working on it. Her son took a transfer to Flint, Michigan. Last year, I sent him a Christmas card from Florida that said, "Glad you're not here." I have not heard more about the fate of her son. They stopped communicating.